talk about a game that was choppy from the start. It was close till it wasn't, and how one play seemingly changed the entire momentum for South Florida. Well, if you're predicting, a close matchup against Boise State on the road taking on South Florida, then you're right. If you're predicting that South Florida was absolutely going to dog walk the Broncos to start the season, props to you. I figured South Florida defense, particularly that D-line, was going to give the Broncos trouble. I didn't know how much. I didn't realize that, South Florida would have pulled out all the stops, all the tricks to, get this ranked win at home to start their season. Bravo to them. I want to say, Boise State looked very human, which I was concerned about going into, this first game on the road and start their season. Where do the Broncos go from here? They were expecting, 6.5, 7-point favorites in this game, and they get pretty much, blown out 34-7. They don't score at all in the second half. Complete disarray. Maddox Matson had trouble getting away from that rush. It's crazy that the start of this game was really choppy. Offense were inconsistent, and I think that showed, great defense on both sides for the Broncos and the Bulls. 3-point game going into halftime. It looked like South Florida momentum was shifting a little bit towards them going into halftime, but still, they come out third quarter, they exchange punts. South Florida gets the ball again. Looks like the drive is stalling. It looks like they're going to punt it away yet again, but freshman quarterback Lachlan Hewitt, stumbles his way onto the field. Boise State realizes it too late. Finds his guy Keyshawn Singleton, 45-yard touchdown. Completely throws Boise State off guard from there, proving that South Florida is going to do whatever it takes to get this ranked win and prove that they're the team to beat in the American Conference. Even after that trick punt goes for a touchdown and it's 7-17 still, Broncos are still very much in this game. Maddox Matson guides them down the field. They get all the way to the 23. South Florida's 23-yard line. It felt like one of those risks that you just don't take this early on in, a 10-point game. Coach Danielson saw it a different way, and they went for it, 4th and 2. Incomplete pass to Cyrus Gaines, and from there the momentum just completely shifts towards South Florida's side. 3 plays later, South Florida goes 77 yards for another score. Byron Brown finds Chase Nimrod for 55 yards through the air, and now this game is seeming like it's fallen out of reach for the Broncos. 7-24 off of one, play you felt, had a 10-point swing basically by not going for the sure field goal early in the third quarter. From there it just goes out of reach, and I feel like Broncos are playing catch up, getting more desperate, and from there it's all the Bulls. Their D-line tightened up even more, and Maddox Matson found it tough to get outside the pocket and try to make a play. Their running game just completely stalled. From there, Broncos, they go out on downs. South Florida scores again. From there, the Broncos 50 yards in the drive and a fumble. South Florida punts. Boise State out on downs. South Florida scores another field goal, and from Broncos just can't answer yet again. They finish the game 34-7, having only scored in the first quarter. Clearly, the Broncos were trying to find a groove, find what worked well for them. I feel like Matson tried to do a little bit too much, tried to scramble around, and it worked on some drives, but they just couldn't find that home run ball. Not to take away from South Florida, this team looks really impressive early on. I would say that Alex Galesh has this team looking like they could do some damage in the American Conference. They do have some tough games coming up with Florida and Miami, but this team can contend, and they could take on Tulane, they could take on Navy, and it's going to be intriguing to see where they go the rest of the season after this huge win. I mean, this squad looked like they had all the right pieces, especially for, Byron Brown looked shaky in the beginning. He's coming off a huge layoff after an injury last season, but after he settled in a little bit, they got the go-ahead score off of that fake punt. He settled in, and he looked composed and was able to use his athleticism, and he really came in strong. He found the deep ball. He looked like the better quarterback that day, and I think Madsen still finding his pieces, who's going to be his go-to guys. I think the running game just wasn't working well for Boise State the way they had hoped. I think they underestimated probably the athleticism of that D-line and really in the secondary. South Florida has some guys on their team, and really it's just impressive how they could look this good early on in the season. I would say, is this more of a fault on the Broncos? I would say no. I think South Florida really is just a good team, and they were able to show that at home, that they can take on a powerhouse program like Boise State and compete. Props to South Florida on the huge win against Boise State to open up your season. Impressive victory, and looking forward to what they do here on out. As for Boise State, it's back to the drawing board. I think they're going to figure it out. I wouldn't let this loss on the road, tough game, get to them too much. I think they go back and figure out what didn't work and how to improve off of it.